Hey there, everybody. Ben here. We're back with another BT13 deck profile. We will be talking about Alphamon this time around, a deck that really got revitalized and brought back to the forefront after a huge wave of support in the newest set, with a brand new top line, a new Doru Gray line to go into. I think we're really seeing Alpha come back in full force. It's a very fun deck to play, very powerful, explosive deck. So here's my take on it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm open to suggestions to making this deck better. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right, without further ado, let's get started. So, in terms of eggs, we are running 4 of your BT7 Dorimon. I think it's just a staple at this point. I don't really have much to say about it. It's a consistency card. You will proc its effect a lot. You're always sliding cards underneath your stack, so more often than not, this draw one just helps you search and unbrick. So don't have much to say about that. In terms of level 3s, we're going to be running 4 of BT7 Dorumon. It is one of your searchers for the deck. You get to reveal top 3. You'll be picking up a Digimon with X antibody and traits, which, surprise, surprise, is all of your Digimon. And you get to also pick up a Coda, which, spoiler alert, we aren't running any Coda in our build, so you are kind of losing that benefit from it. But the ability to search and just look for your pieces off of this card is pretty big. Its inheritable is also very huge because every time you slide a card under your stack, similar to your Dorimon, you are gaining a memory. It is a once per turn, so it doesn't just happen all the time, but sometimes enough where you can use that to prolong your combo plays and give you enough resources. So probably your best rookie, I think, that you're running right now. Next is where it gets a little bit funky. Let's just put it that way. I am open to feedback on this part. I am running a 3-3 split of these rookies here. Just because with this deck, for those who've played it, I'm sure you can agree, it can be very bricky, right? There will be moments where you're really struggling to find your pieces, really struggling to see what you want to see. And I just feel like that's where Ryudamon and even this Dorumon is important in terms of consistency. But then at times, Ryuda as an inheritable, if you're sliding under your stack, is sort of just like, it is a card you can slide. It is something that you can use as just a body, but it just doesn't do much, decoy. There are times where you really want the Sunariza, right? Where that check +1 can be super helpful in terms of aggression and tempo play, and sometimes just the simple draw 2 is useful for the Dorumon. So I just feel like I wanted to see each one of these in certain scenarios, and it was just hard to predict how often I would see those scenarios, which is why I just opted for the 2-2-2 split. I still think 10 rookies is the ideal number for this deck. I think any more, you start to lose out on some of your other high-end pieces. I think any less, you run the risk of just bricking to high heaven, which is why I think 10 is needed. I just don't know the good split. That's why I have it the way that I have it. I'll be honest, I haven't tested too much with this particular ratio split out, so maybe this will change. But I guess this is also a good way to highlight some of the rookies you could run. I've definitely seen decks that have run like 3-3. I've seen decks that have run 4 Ryuda and 2 of this guy. But like I said, I am throwing in the 2 of the Sunariza just because I do want to see that +1 check at times, because you're definitely going to be over 13k DP. And sometimes with Alpha, you just want to be able to end the game quickly, because if you lose your stack, there's not a lot you can do. So if you're promoting and you're putting your big guy out there, you want to be able to finish it as soon as possible, and Sunariza is a good way to do that. Important to note, though, you can't search out for this guy. You can slip him under your stack, so sometimes it's just sort of dead, right? That's why I don't want to run 4 of him, but I do want to sprinkle him in there. So that's the level 3 lineup. Next, level 4s, we are running 4 of your Dex Darugamon, which is sort of your bread and butter for this deck when you pair it with your Darugamons. More often than not, you are going to be digivolving this upon your promotion. So you want to be able to play out you want to be able to go into your Darugamons here in raising. So we're doing a 3-3 split here. Both of them inheritable, give you +1 KDP all turns, so no distinction there. The main distinction is, for me, the play cost. You know, if you're really sore and looking for a body, this guy is your BT13 Darugamon is a play cost of 4, whereas your BT7 Darugamon is a play cost of 6. Both are 5k DP, so vulnerable to whatever removal effects are there, but the play cost cheapness, I think, helps me want to run this at 3. The opponent's turn giving blocker to the stack, in my honest opinion, will probably not proc off a whole lot. So it's really not that prevalent or not that sort of useful, but I think just a 3-3 split, I think, is all right. Like I said, you really want to see this guy as much as possible, just because it's a free to digivolve. You can trash 1 to gain 1, so you're effectively gaining a memory while setting up your trash with this card. And if you have your cool boys in play, I mean, you could gain 3, 4, 5 memory by going into this card and drawing cards off of it as well, which is just your sort of bread and butter, your gas to get you going into your combo plays. So more often than not, I am trying to digivolve into a Darugamon in raising, wait until I get my pieces, then promote, go into Dex Darugamon. Because another thing is that this also gives your stack blocker retail. So this card gives so much to your stack, gives so much to your ability to consistently find your pieces and get the gas that you need to go for that really big explosive play that Alpha is known for. So this card is vital, extremely vital to your deck. I think you have to run it at a 4 of. And like I said, I'm doing the 3-3 split of the other 2 level 4s there. Level 5s, we are running 2 of your BT7 Dexdoru Greymon. I don't think he's as vital as your BT9 Dex Darugamon here. Simply because, yeah, it's a 1 cost to digivolve. You can trash 1 to, again, set up your trash to make it a free digivolution. When digivolving, you get to pop a level 4, which, like, great. You know, if you can pop a blocker with that, that's perfect. But otherwise, it really doesn't have a whole lot of value outside of just being an additional card in your stack. We're running 1 of the limited BT7 Doru Greymon. Such a good card. You know, back when this was at 4, I mean, this is what made Alpha so good. When digivolving, you can place a black card with X antibody and traits underneath as a digivolution source. This prevents deletion by effect. This also prevents DP reduction, which is huge, particularly in this meta right now. It basically shuts down your Shine Gray from getting rid of your Alpha stack if you time it correctly. Its inheritable also is you get +1 check if you have X antibody and trait, which, again, you most likely will have X antibody and trait because that's all you're running. So you will get +1 check from this. With what you do with your combo stacks, this really gives that OTK push. So this card, you run it absolutely 100%. Then we're running 4 of your new BT13 Doru Greymon. Very good card still, I think. When digivolving, you can reveal top 3 cards of your deck. By doing so, you can slip 1 card with X antibody from those revealed 3 as a source in your stack. If you do that, you can't be DP reduced. So another way to sort of block and prevent DP reduction to keep your stack alive. End of turn, you can slide one Digimon card with X antibody trait from your hand as a Digivolution card. So another way to sort of slide stuff underneath your stack and help buff your stack up, help manipulate memory, get your draw power in and whatnot. So I think overall a pretty decent alternative. I still think, obviously BT7 Doru Greymon's goated and just miles better. But I'm not going to say that this is bad by any means. I still think this is a very good card. I still think it is a Doru Greymon, right? Which helps Alphamon a whole lot because that's what it was missing for a long time. So I think it's a good card. You run out of 4 of. And that's it for our level 5s. Next, for our level 6s, we are running 3 of our BT8 Oriumon. I think important for our combo plays. Inheritable is if it has Alphamon a name at the end of attack, you can unsuspend, which helps you just really get that aggression play going. Or if you're worried about something swinging over your stack, that just at least helps you just restand and reboot in a sense. I think another thing that is commonly sort of forgotten about this card is that everybody is so fixated on using Oriumon as a source, right? And I agree, right? Ideally, you're using this as a source underneath your Alphamon stack to, like I said, go for that unsuspend play. But, you can still Digivolve on top of your stack, and its Digivolution effect is actually not too bad. You can place a card underneath the stack with X antibody and trait. By doing so, you can pop one of your opponent's play cost of 7 or less, which can get rid of some pesky bodies on board, and can be very helpful in doing so. And then once per turn effect during your turn, if something is slipped underneath its stack, you can give this card plus 2 KDP, and it can't be deleted by opponent's effect, which sort of gives it pseudo protection there too. So, it's not a bad play to necessarily Digivolve into this guy. It's definitely not your ideal play, right? I still think ideally this is in trash. You've set it up so that you can slide it underneath. But don't forget that you can still Digivolve on top of this and still get a pretty good-sized, strong level 6 body on the board that can still do damage, So don't forget about that. I'm running this at 3 of just because I want to see it. I don't think you run it at any less. I think if you run it at any less, you risk just not seeing it and missing out on your combo play. Next, for our Alphamons, we are running 1 of the BT9 Alphamon. When Digivolving, you can place a card with X antibody and trait underneath its Digivolution stack. By doing so, you can de-Digivolve 1, which can be helpful in terms of control. Other than that, doesn't really do a whole lot, which is why I like the new BT13 Alphamon just a little bit better. On Digivolution or on play, you're obviously not playing this, hard casting this in this particular deck. In Royal Knights you will be. But when Digivolving, you can place a card with X antibody or Royal Knights and traits underneath the stack. By doing so, you shut down your opponent's play cost of 10 or higher. So pretty much all their potential level 6s from swinging next turn, which can be huge, right? It can be a pretty big block, pretty big sort of stifler for decks like Royal Knights, whatnot. Doesn't prevent your lower bodies from swinging, but definitely does prevent your big guys from swinging. For example, like Belphemon, right? Belphemon, Royal Knights, which are 2 very prominent decks right now in this meta. You can just stop them from swinging, which is huge. And then another thing to keep in mind, all turns, once per turn, if something tries to remove this card from the field, you basically purge 1 card with X antibody or Royal Knights to prevent that removal. Which again, pretty good. It's a way of keeping this guy on board, and keeping him as a threat, keeping him active and live. So I think you run a 3-1 split for me personally. I know some people will run a 2-2 split which is still, I think, a viable option. I just think for me personally, I like the 3-1 split just because I do like this Alphamon more for this particular meta and this particular, I guess, sort of, meta prevalence. What we're seeing right now, I like this more. I think sometimes with this Alphamon, you almost don't want to de-digivolve them, right? Because say you de-digivolve a Shine Greymon, well, surprise, if they have another one in hand, they're going to go right back into it and, neg more DP. So sometimes you don't want to do that, which is why I feel like this is just a little bit better in today's format. So those are our level 6s. Last Digimon we're playing, I think, is just pretty obvious choice here. 3 of your BT9 Alphamon, or you can. It's a Digivolve 3 cost from an Alphamon with Oriyumon in its stack. So otherwise, this guy will cost 7 to Digivolve, which is why folks don't love just going on to it if you don't have the right setup. So it is expensive, but it's still very, very effective because when Digivolving, you get to delete all of your opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost. And at the end of your turn, which most of the times as you Digivolve into this card, you pass turn, you're able to remove or strip your own sources from your stack, up to 7 of them, and they can't be a Digi-Egg, but you can remove up to 7 and gain 1 memory for each card you remove. So if you can imagine a huge Alphamon stack, you just remove sources and you just gain memory for each one you remove. If you've Digivolved for 3, you could gain memory by going into this guy, which is not bad at all, right? I think it sets up a lot for next plays and stringing along those aggression OTK plays. Some people will argue run it at 2. I just am afraid of not seeing it. I think when I tried running it at 2, I was just looking, and it just felt bad knowing that you just couldn't find your Oryukin and you don't have a play, God forbid those times you're running only 2 and one of them is insecurity and you're like, well, I have to find that one card, otherwise my entire game plan is sort of screwed, I just feel like I feel more safer running this at a 3 of, just because you need to see this card for you to win your round and to win your overall match. You need to be able to see this consistently, and I think you have to run it at a 3 of. Tamers are going to be pretty self-explanatory. We've got 4 Cool Boy from BT9. I mean, this guy was in the talks to be banned and restricted for a reason. He's just so much value. 2 cost Tamer, so you play him for 2. You search top 3. You get to add a card with X antibody in trait, which, surprise, is pretty much most of your deck and most of the pieces you'll be needing. And 1 X antibody card, which, again, just huge value off of this 2 cost Tamer. And on top of that, if you Digivolve into an X antibody Digimon with the same level, for example, like I said, your Darugamon into a Dex Daruga, your Dorugray into a Dex Dorugray, you can suspend this Tamer to gain a memory and draw 1, which is just straight up gas, right? You string on 2, 3 Cool Boys, you go into your Dex Daruga. Not only have you gained 1 from Dex Daruga, now you have gained 3 from Cool Boy, gaining 4 memory by Digivolving and drawing 3 cards. So the value off of a 2 cost Tamer is insane. Obviously, huge victim to like Hades Forest, Black War Gray, but I just think it's just too important to not run of. I know some people cut it down originally just because the deck is so tight and they wanted to add more pieces, but I think the value that Cool Boy gives you is just too great to run it any less than a 4. I'm running him at 4 of. Next Tamer that we're playing are the BT8 Yuji. Again, I think a pretty important tamer. I almost would rather have Yuji over Coda. Reason being is that it's a 3 cost to play, which is just a little bit cheaper. It's not a memory setter, but during your turn, if you raise a Digimon with X antibody trait from raising area or breeding area to the field, you gain a memory and you draw 1, which can be very helpful. If you have your ideal stack, which again is just a Darugamon, you can promote, gain a memory, draw 1, go into Dex Daruga, again, gain a memory, potentially gain more off a Cool Boy. Like, you get so much gas, even if your opponent tries to choke you with your other resources, which is why I don't personally run Coda. I think Yuji gives you that consistency, gives you that memory gain, and allows you to also do a very cheeky play where, for example, if you have these guys on field, right, and you have your Oryuken play, you've done your swing, and you keep turn, and you do end of attack, you restand, you can swing again, right? But this time, when swinging, you can choose to proc Yuji, and if you have an Oryumon in hand, you can slide this under your stack, and now you can proc and unsuspend again because this is a fresh Oryumon. If you have both in the stack at the same time, important note, and you swing and you try to restand, that counts as proccing both. So this does not count as, oh, I've unsuspended once, let me swing again and unsuspend again. No. It has to be you swung, you restood, and you swung while adding, and then you can proc this to restand. So Yuji allows you to pull that play off. If you can imagine the Sec +1 Doru Gray or even a Sunariza, right? You're swinging for 2, restanding, swing for 2 again, potentially restanding again, swing for another 2. That's 6 checks. And that's your combo play, right? So I think Yuji can do a whole lot for your combos and what this deck wants to do. Like I said, gives you that memory and draw power. So I'd rather have him over Coda, and I think he pays back for what Coda is missing. Next, let's talk about our options. We are running 2 of the Black Memory Boost just because, like any other OTK deck, you want to see your pieces. You don't need to max out 4 just because you have so much search and draw power with this deck that you don't really need any more than 2. But I still think you could use that additional either memory gain or consistency search. So I'm running it at 2 of. We are running 2 Kongu from BT9. Absolutely valuable card because it prevents particularly your lower bodies from attacking security, aka Marcus in the Shine Gray matchup. It prevents cards from being added to security stacks. So if you're playing against decks that like to recover a lot, like to run a lot of chaos degrades, Kongu will shut this down 100%. So I think it's a very good card. Very nice value for what it does and can be helpful in just kind of stalling out your plays. So I think it's a helpful run of at 2. And last 2, we're running a split of these 2 options here as just sort of like a tech piece. We'll start with Breath of the Gods. I think Breath of the Gods is still very good and still very viable. From BT3, basically, one of your Digimon gains reboot, which if you're swinging with your Ori, you can give it reboot to restand. And this can't have its DP reduced, can't be returned to owner's hand or deck, so it can't be bottom decked, can't be bounced back to hand until the end of your opponent's turn. So it really just blocks any sort of big effect from affecting it. Can't be DP reduced from Shine, can't be bounced by Mirage, can't be Chaos degraded or whatever. Well, it can't be, sorry, I apologize. It can't be Chaos degraded, but just can't be returned to bottom of the deck or hand. So I still think this is a pretty good card, pretty solid card. If, you kind of need that extra, like, yeah, my Doru Grey protection is out. Let's just go ahead and use Breath to ensure that my stag lives another turn, which at that point can spell game, right, for your opponent. Last card is Final Zubagon Punch from BT4. Sort of a little neat tech. I think you don't run it at more than a 1-of just because it would probably clog your hand up a little bit, but gives one of your Digimon until the end of your opponent's turn blocker, gives it reboot, gives it security check +1, and gives it 3000 KD, or 3000 3k DP. Which again, if you're thinking about your Oryuken play, if you have Tsunariza, Doru Grey, and Final Zubagon Punch, I mean that's 4 security checks. You can give it at least 2 security checks, more often than not 3, with what your inheritables will be looking like. Give it reboot, give it blocker. I mean, I think it's just, huge, right? Which 3k will typically make your Oryuken probably 20k at that point. I think unless a Shine is able to run some crazy wombo combo play, there's no way they're reducing one of your Digimon by 20,000. If they do, kudos to them. They probably deserve game at that point. But, I just think this card is a pretty good card in terms of just closing things out and giving you that, for lack of a better way of putting it, that final punch, right? So that's the deck profile. Like I said before, the link to the photo will be in the description. It'll also be shown up here on screen within the next few seconds. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoy this deck profile. I'm, again, open to comments, feedback, anything that you think may be better. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.